She told the judge I was an unfit father, the same woman who hadn't called our daughter in 11 months. Now she wanted everything. My name's Grant Holloway. I'm 41 years old, and until about 18 months ago, I was a high school shop teacher in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Taught woodworking, basic welding, a little engine repair. The kind of classes that most parents think are a waste of time until their kid comes home knowing how to fix a leaky faucet. I loved that job. Loved the smell of sawdust, the sound of a lathe spinning, the look on a 16-year-old's face when they finished their first bookshelf and realized they'd actually built something real. But that was before the accident, before my wife left, before I found out exactly how much a person you love can hate you when they smell money. It started on a rainy night in March. I was driving home from a parent-teacher conference when a delivery truck ran a red light on Route 218 and hit my pickup broadside. I don't remember the impact. I remember waking up in a hospital bed 3 days later with a shattered left leg, 4 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a wife who looked more annoyed than relieved. "The school called," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "They need to know when you're coming back." I just woke up from a coma, Claire. I know. I'm just telling you what they said. That was Claire, my wife of 14 years, the woman I'd built a house with, raised a daughter with, planned a future with. She had this way of making you feel like your problems were an inconvenience to her schedule. I'd ignored it for years, told myself she was just practical, just efficient. But lying in that hospital bed, watching her scroll through Instagram while I tried to breathe through a tube, something shifted in me. The recovery took 8 months. 8 months of physical therapy, surgeries, painkillers that made the world feel like it was wrapped in cotton. I couldn't teach. I couldn't drive. I could barely make it to the bathroom without help. Disability covered about 60% of my salary, which meant we were burning through savings fast. Claire handled it the way Claire handled everything. She made it about herself. "I didn't sign up for this," she said. One night while I was doing my exercises on the living room floor trying to bend my knee past 45 degrees. I'm 39 years old, and I'm basically a nurse now. I didn't sign up for getting hit by a truck. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Our daughter, Lily, was 12 at the time. She was the one who helped me the most. She'd sit next to me during physical therapy, telling me about school, about her friends, about whatever book she was reading. She never complained, never made me feel like a burden. She was the best part of my life. And honestly, the only reason I kept pushing through the pain. Claire started going out more. Girls' nights that happened 3 or 4 times a week. She'd come home late, smelling like expensive cologne that wasn't mine, and crawl into bed without a word. I'm not stupid. I knew what was happening, but I was broken, physically and financially dependent on her, and I had a daughter to think about, so I said nothing. The day she left, Lily was at school. Claire sat me down at the kitchen table and said she'd been seeing someone, a man named Todd. He was a regional sales manager for a medical device company, made good money, had a boat. She said it like those were qualifications on a resume. "I want a divorce," she said, "and I want primary custody of Lily." "You can't be serious. Grant, look at yourself. You can barely walk. You're popping pills every 4 hours. You can't even drive her to school. What kind of father is that? The kind who's here every single day. Where were you last Tuesday when she had a fever? I was the one who stayed up all night with her." Claire's face hardened. "My lawyer will be in touch." She took Lily that afternoon, packed 2 suitcases, and drove to Todd's condo in Waterloo. Lily was crying when they pulled out of the driveway. She pressed her hand against the car window and mouthed, "I'm sorry, Dad." That image burned itself into my brain. I see it every night before I fall asleep. The divorce was brutal. Claire's lawyer painted me as a disabled, pill-dependent man incapable of caring for a child. The fact that I'd switched to over-the-counter pain medication 2 months earlier didn't matter. The fact that I'd never missed a single parent-teacher conference, never forgotten a school lunch, never once raised my voice at my daughter, didn't matter. Claire got primary custody. I got every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment above a hardware store on Main Street. The stairs were agony on my leg, but the rent was cheap and the owner, a guy named Harold, let me pay late when I needed to. I went back to teaching part-time, standing for as long as my leg would allow, then sitting on a stool for the rest of class. The kids were kind about it, most of them anyway. Life settled into a gray routine. Teach, therapy, sleep. See Lily every other weekend. Try to pack enough love into 48 hours to last her 2 weeks. Watch her grow up in snapshots. She turned 13 without me there. Claire threw her a party at Todd's house, with Todd's family, with Todd's money. Lily told me about it later, carefully, like she was afraid of hurting my feelings. "It was fine, Dad. I wished you were there." Me too, sweetheart. Then my mother died. Mom had been sick for a while. Lung cancer, stage 4, diagnosed the same month Claire left. She lived in a nursing home in Dubuque, and I visited her every Sunday, driving an hour each way in a used Honda Civic that burned oil and shook above 50. We'd sit in her room and she'd tell me stories about my father, who died when I was 6. Stories I'd heard 100 times but never got tired of. She passed on a Thursday morning in September. The nurse called me at 5 a.m. "Your mother went peacefully, Mr. Holloway. She wasn't in pain." The funeral was small. A few of her friends from church, my cousin Ray from Minneapolis, Harold from the hardware store. Claire didn't come. Lily wanted to, but Claire said she had a school project. She was 13. She didn't have a school project at 10 a.m. on a Saturday. A week after the funeral, I got a call from a lawyer in Dubuque named Patricia Webb. She told me my mother had a life insurance policy I didn't know about. My father had taken it out 40 years ago, and Mom had kept paying the premiums her entire life. She'd never told me. "Mr. Holloway, the policy is valued at $2.4 million. I sat down on the edge of my bed. That's not possible. My parents were working class. My dad was a plumber. He took out the policy in 1984 when rates were very different. Your mother was the sole beneficiary after his death, and she designated you as her successor beneficiary. The policy also accumulated significant cash value over 4 decades, $2.4 million. It wasn't $63 million. It wasn't buy-in island money. But to a man living above a hardware store on a part-time teacher's salary, with a leg held together by titanium screws, it might as well have been $1 billion. "There's one thing you should know," Patricia said. "The payout requires processing through probate since it's part of your mother's estate. It'll be public record. Anyone who looks for it can find it." I should have paid more attention to that warning. It took exactly 9 days for Claire to find out. I know because on day 9, she showed up at my apartment for the first time since the divorce. She was wearing the concerned face, the one she used at PTA meetings and neighborhood barbecues. The face that said, "I care so much." "Grant, we need to talk about Lily's future." "Lily's future is fine. I see her every other weekend." "That's actually what I want to discuss. I think we should revisit the custody arrangement." I looked at her. Same perfect hair, same careful makeup, same calculated warmth in her eyes. But something was different. She was nervous. Her fingers were fidgeting with her car keys. "Revisit how?" "I think Lily would benefit from more time with you. Maybe even primary custody. Todd and I have been talking, and we think it might be good for her." I almost laughed. 14 months ago, she'd argued in court that I was too broken to care for my own child. Now she wanted to hand Lily back like a library book she was done with. "What changed, Claire?" "Nothing changed. I just think, you found out about Mom's insurance policy." She didn't even flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Get out of my apartment." She left, but she wasn't done. Not even close. 2 weeks later, I got served with papers. Claire was filing for a modification of our custody agreement, requesting primary physical custody be transferred to me with a revised child support arrangement. On the surface, it looked generous. She was giving me my daughter back. But buried in the legal language was a clause requesting that I establish a trust fund for Lily with Claire, named as trustee and financial manager until Lily turned 21. The proposed management fee was 15% of the trust per year. 15% of $2.4 million every year for 8 years. I called my lawyer, a guy named Dennis Park who'd handled my divorce. "Dennis, can she do this?" Technically, any custodial parent can request a modification, and proposing a trust for the child isn't unusual. But naming herself as trustee with a 15% management fee? That's not about Lily. That's about money. So what do? We fight it. But Grant, you should know something. Claire's new lawyer is expensive. Richard Calloway. He handles high-profile custody cases. Someone's funding this. Todd. Probably. They're investing money to make money. This is a business move dressed up as a custody modification. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I started paying attention. Cedar Falls is a small town. About 40,000 people, give or take. Everyone's connected to everyone else through 2 or 3 degrees. My old buddy Mike Reeves worked at the county clerk's office. My former student, Tyler Banks, was doing IT work for the school district and half the businesses in town. And Harold, my landlord, had been running the hardware store for 30 years and knew every contractor, handyman, and homeowner within 50 miles. I didn't ask them to spy for me. I just started listening. Amazing what people will tell you when they think you're just a busted-up shop teacher who's not a threat to anyone. Mike told me that Todd had recently filed a DBA for a financial consulting company. No clients, no revenue, no office. Just a piece of paper that said he was qualified to manage money. The same Todd who was behind Claire's trust fund proposal. Tyler mentioned, casually over coffee, that he'd done some network work for Todd's company last year and had seen emails between Todd and Claire going back way further than Claire had admitted in court. Way further. Like 2 years before our divorce further. And Harold, bless him, told me that Todd had been in the store 3 times in the past month, buying supplies for a kitchen renovation at his condo, paying with credit cards that kept getting declined. The picture was getting clearer. Todd wasn't the successful sales manager Claire had made him out to be. He was struggling. The boat was leased. The condo had a second mortgage. The medical device company had downsized his territory twice. He needed my mother's insurance money as badly as Claire did. But the thing that really turned the tide happened on a Wednesday evening. It was my night with Lily. We were eating pizza at Rosario's, our usual spot, when she went quiet. "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always." "Mom and Todd have been fighting a lot. About money. Todd keeps saying something about a trust and how it's going to fix everything. Mom tells him to be patient." My stomach tightened. "What else do they say?" Todd said. "He said you're not smart enough to know what's happening. That by the time you figure it out, it'll be done." She looked down at her pizza. "I don't like him, Dad. He talks about you like you're stupid." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Lily, I need you to know something. I'm not stupid, and I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of us. Either of us." "I know, Dad." She squeezed my hand. "You're the smartest person I know." That night, after I dropped Lily back at Claire's, I sat in my car outside the hardware store and cried. Not because I was sad. Because my 13-year-old daughter had more loyalty and courage than her mother had ever shown, and she deserved better than being used as a pawn in a money grab. I called Dennis the next morning. "I want to go on offense." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't just want to block Claire's trust proposal. I want full custody. And I want to make sure Todd and Claire never try something like this again. That's a significant escalation, Grant. They're using my daughter as a vehicle to steal from me. I'd call that a significant situation." Dennis was quiet for a moment. "All right, but we need evidence. Not just suspicion. Hard proof that this is financially motivated, not about Lily's welfare. I've got to start on that, but I need help with the rest." I hired a private investigator named Joan Wynn. She was a former state police detective who'd retired early and started her own firm. She was expensive, but Patricia Webb had already begun processing the insurance payout, and she'd agreed to advance me some funds against the estate. Joan was thorough. Within 2 weeks, she'd put together a timeline that made Claire and Todd's scheme painfully obvious. Todd's fake consulting company had been registered 3 days after my mother's death. Claire's first call to Richard Calloway, the expensive custody lawyer, was made the same week the insurance policy became public record. And the trust proposal, with its 15% management fee, had actually been drafted by Todd, not by Claire's attorney. Joan found the original Word document on Todd's business laptop, which he'd carelessly synced to a cloud account with a weak password. But the most damaging piece of evidence was simpler than all of that. Joan obtained Todd's financial records through legal discovery channels and found that he was $180,000 in debt. Credit cards, car lease, second mortgage, unpaid taxes. He was drowning. And Claire, it turned out, had co-signed on 2 of his credit cards. She was drowning too. "They're not fighting over custody," Joan said, sliding the file across my kitchen table. "They're fighting over a life raft." The hearing was on a Tuesday in November. Cedar Falls District Court. Judge Robert Adler presiding. I wore my best suit, which was also my only suit, the same one I'd worn to my mother's funeral. Dennis had prepped me for 3 days straight. He told me to stay calm, answer directly, and let the evidence do the talking. Claire arrived with Todd and Richard Calloway. She was dressed conservatively, soft colors, minimal jewelry, the grieving mother look. Todd was in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He kept checking his phone and bouncing his knee. Calloway went first. He argued that Lily would be better served with more time with her father, and that a properly managed trust fund would secure her future. He presented character witnesses, including 2 of Claire's coworkers, who testified that she was a loving, selfless mother who only wanted the best for her child. Then Dennis stood up. "Your Honor, the petitioner's proposal appears generous on its surface, but we believe it is, in fact, a calculated attempt to gain financial control over a $2.4 million life insurance payout that belongs solely to Mr. Holloway." He walked the judge through everything. Todd's consulting company, registered 3 days after my mother's death. The timeline showing Claire's attorney was contacted the same week the insurance became public record. Todd's $180,000 debt, the co-signed credit cards, and the original trust document, drafted not by an attorney but by Todd himself, complete with the metadata showing his name as the author. Claire's composure cracked for the first time when Dennis introduced the financial records. She turned to Todd, and I could see her mouth the words, "You told me that was private." Todd didn't look at her. He was staring straight ahead, his face the color of old concrete. "Your Honor," Dennis continued, "we'd also like to present testimony from the respondent's daughter, Lily Holloway, age 13. Calloway objected immediately. "Your Honor, bringing a minor into a custody dispute is inappropriate and potentially harmful." "Your Honor," Dennis replied. "The petitioner filed this action claiming it was in the best interest of the child. The child would like to speak to her own best interest." Judge Adler considered this for a moment, then allowed it. Lily walked to the witness stand in her school clothes, a blue sweater and jeans. She looked small and serious and unbelievably brave. "Lily," Dennis said gently, "can you tell the court where you'd like to live?" "With my dad." "Can you tell us why?" "Because my dad never left. He was hurt really bad, and he still showed up for everything. He helped me with my homework from a wheelchair. He came to my school play on crutches. He never missed anything." She paused, and I could see her eyes getting bright. "My mom left when things got hard. Todd doesn't even know my middle name. My dad is the only person who's never given up on me." The courtroom was silent. Claire was crying. Todd was staring at the table. Even Calloway had stopped writing notes. "One more question, Lily," Dennis said. "Have you ever heard Todd or your mother discuss your father's finances?" "Yes. Todd told my mom that the trust thing was going to fix all their money problems. He said Dad wouldn't figure it out because he's just a shop teacher." Judge Adler's expression told me everything I needed to know before he said a word. He denied Claire's trust proposal entirely. He awarded me primary custody of Lily effective immediately. He ordered Claire to pay a portion of my legal fees. And in his closing remarks, he said something I'll never forget. "This court finds that the petitioner's modification request was motivated not by parental concern, but by financial self-interest. Using a child as an instrument to access another person's assets is not just legally impermissible, it is morally reprehensible." Claire didn't look at me as she left the courtroom. Todd was already on his phone, probably calling his own lawyer to figure out how much trouble he was in. Calloway packed his briefcase without a word. Outside, the November air was cold and sharp. Lily was waiting by Dennis's car, hugging herself against the wind. When she saw me, she ran. I caught her and held on tight, my bad legs screaming, but I didn't care. "We're going home, Dad?" "Yeah, sweetheart, we're going home." That evening, Lily fell asleep on the couch in my apartment while we watched a movie. I sat at the kitchen table, looking at the stack of mail Harold had left for me. Bills, mostly, but also a letter from Patricia Webb, confirming the insurance payout had been finalized. $2.4 million. After taxes and legal fees, it was closer to $1.6 million. Still life-changing money. Enough to buy a real house, set up a college fund for Lily, maybe even retire from teaching early and open my own woodworking shop. But I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt tired. Not the physical kind of tired, though my leg was throbbing. A deeper tired. The kind that comes from spending 2 years fighting people who were supposed to love you. I thought about Claire, about the woman I'd married, the woman who'd held my hand in the delivery room when Lily was born, the woman who'd slow danced with me in our kitchen on our 5th anniversary. That woman was gone. Maybe she'd never really existed. Maybe I just wanted her to exist so badly that I'd invented her. My phone buzzed. A text from Dennis. "Heard from Calloway. Claire's not appealing. Todd moved out of the condo last week. It's over." I texted back. "Thanks for everything, Dennis. You did the hard part. Get some rest." I walked to the window and looked down at Main Street. The hardware store sign was lit up below, casting an orange glow on the wet pavement. Harold was probably in there, restocking shelves, the way he did every night. Somewhere in Waterloo, Claire was sitting in a condo she could no longer afford, figuring out her next move. And Todd was out there somewhere too, drowning in debt with no one left to bail him out. I didn't feel sorry for them, but I didn't feel satisfied either. Revenge is a strange thing. You spend so long imagining it, building it up in your head, and when it finally happens, it doesn't taste the way you expected. It doesn't fill the hole. It just makes the hole quieter for a while. Lily shifted on the couch, mumbling something in her sleep. I pulled the blanket up over her shoulders and kissed her forehead. Tomorrow, I'd call a real estate agent. I'd start looking for a house with a yard, maybe a garage I could convert into a workshop. I'd set up Lily's college fund. I'd figure out the rest as it came. But tonight, I just sat in the dark and listened to my daughter breathe. The accident hadn't ended me. The betrayal hadn't broken me. And the money hadn't saved me. Lily had. She'd been saving me every day since the moment she was born. And that, in the end, was worth more than any insurance policy in the world.